So now I get to welcome you to the post-screening Q&A for One Fast Move. Please give a big round of applause for the writer and director of the movie, Kelly Blatz. Hello and congratulations.
Hello, thank you so much. Thank you all for being here tonight. I hope you enjoyed the film. Yeah? Okay, good.
All right, so my first question for you is a general question about motorcycles, because I feel like anybody who watches this movie can totally tell that it is made by someone who loves them. Mm-hmm. So can you tell us a little bit about what sparked that love?
What sparked that love? You know, I didn't start riding motorcycles till late in my life, in my late 20s. And the minute I got on two wheels, I felt like it was a part of me, you know? And once you start riding, for those of you who do or don't, it becomes like a form of meditation, you know? I was always scared to ride motorcycles for some reason. And once you do, and you get past that fear, it helps you kind of face other fears in your life. And for me, because I had so much love for it, I wanted to write a love letter of a film to motorcycles. And I'm not a motorcycle racer, but you know, I realized that there wasn't a motorcycle racing film for some reason, and I decided it was a great challenge and decided to, write this film.
So you go into making this film already loving motorcycles. I'm curious, is there anything new about them you wound up loving, or maybe loving even more because of your experience making the movie?
Absolutely. So I wasn't very familiar with sport bikes and race bikes. I ride, you know, cruisers and classics. And so race bikes are different than just sport bikes. They're the souped up hyper versions, custom built super bikes. And once you get on the back of one of those, it's like nothing else. It's a feeling that you really can't describe. You just have to try it. And it's strange. There's that line in the film, which is the faster that you go, the calmer you feel, which really came from my own life, which is really once, you know, if you're going fast, you can't think about anything else because the stakes are so high. And so your mind end up getting much, much, much calmer. Sorry. At higher speeds. So
you're the filmmaker. You're allowed to have that happen.
My fault. My mom probably texted
It's everyone messaging you to congratulate you on your movie. So I was reading a little bit about how you started working on, I think, an outline for this story in 2017. So I'm wondering, what is the biggest difference between how you pictured the film turning out back then compared to the finished film that everyone gets to see on Prime Video now?
Yeah, you know, so before you shoot a film, you visualize it and you start to have sort of an essence or a feeling. And you have a lot of films that are inspirations and you have a sort of tone and a palette that you imagine. But for me, once you start putting the pieces together and the cast together and you start bringing on the creative team, it starts to tell itself what it is, and you have to kind of listen to it. And so you shoot the film, and every day, you know, you have to half know exactly what you want and half be open to what actually is happening on the day. And then once you finish shooting the film, you see all the footage and it's completely pulled apart, and then you have to craft the film, and it starts to look like a combination again of what you imagined and what it wants to be in that sense. So I can say that at the end of the day, this film is exactly what I'd hoped for, but also something I didn't even expect.
Beautiful answer. Very many follow-ups now. First, I'll lean into cast because you brought up the importance of your cast here. And in particular, I have to talk about KJ, who is phenomenal in the film. I was reading that, we can applaud for him.
Yeah.
Please do.
Let's get some screams going. He's a handsome guy. Very talented, wonderful, wonderful guy.
I had read that you had decided he was perfect for this role after seeing a single clip from Songbird. What was it about that clip that signaled to you he was the star of your movie?
Well, I was writing the film during COVID, the actual script during COVID, and there was like a couple of films made during that time, which one of them was Songbird. And as I'm writing it, I see this trailer pop up, and I see KJ on a motorcycle. And there was something about him and his presence where he had this sort of tough exterior, but you can tell that something was always going on in his mind. He had this emotional sensitivity as well that he was sort of covering. And it was really that essence And then seeing him on a motorcycle, I thought, that's the guy that I'm thinking about when I'm writing this. And luckily, when I finished the script and got the script to him, he responded to it and became like a brother to me. He's just an amazing, amazing guy.
So you go into making this movie knowing he's perfect for the role. I'm curious, along the way, though, what is something that he unearthed in the character of Wes that maybe you, even as the writer of the movie, never realized was there?
What's interesting is KJ came on about a year before we started shooting, because he was shooting the 6th season of Riverdale, and we were going to shoot between those seasons, but we just didn't have enough time. So he ended up being on it a year before we started shooting. And during that year, he had so many ideas. He would call me, like I was up all night thinking about this scene, and he would have all these ideas, which was amazing for me because it made me think about the script in a different way, and I would adapt the script to what he was thinking about. And, you know, I think it's pretty rare to have an actor for a year while they're working on something else, you know, be thinking about your script. And it was just a blessing because the script only got better because of his passion for it.
Got to talk a little bit about your approach to directing actors, because I feel like many people know you are also an actor, a very experienced actor. I'm going to give you a big 2-part question about this. Can you name something that a director did for you in the past as an actor that you appreciated and wanted to bring to your set? But then also, what is something that you wish more directors did for you that you now strive to bring for your actors?
These are great questions, by the way. Yes, so I think, me personally, I think the greatest thing you can give an actor is freedom and trust on a set. And because actors, you know, they're dealing with, their instruments are themselves, which is their emotions, you know, and they have insecurities and fears. And so when you build trust with an actor and you give them the space to say, hey, nothing that you do is wrong, right? Like, you can do a cartwheel in this scene and it's totally right. And when you give somebody that license, then the anxiety goes away and you start to see true emotion come through. And I learned that as an actor because I've been on sets where that's not the case, and someone's like, hey, you got to do this right now. We got 5 minutes and you better cry, you know, and that just makes you tense up and, you know, not want to cry. And so that was a huge lesson for me as an actor. And I think I answered your second question, which is, you know, which again, I don't want to talk, you know, ill about anybody, but I think sometimes, you know, it becomes so much about like, sometimes too much about the visuals, which is so important, but like, hey, you really need to do this right now because time is money, and actors just shrink into a corner when you do that, and so it's kind of counterproductive.
So while you were answering that, I was thinking about something else that I had read in our press notes. I think Maia might have said this, that like no take was ever the same on this set. I don't know if you remember this with this much specificity, but can you give us a particular example of 2 takes you got for a scene that were so incredibly different and you had to choose between the 2?
Yeah, so especially with the stuff with KJ and Maia, especially when it was just a scene of them talking at a bar or by the lake, I would say, you know, we have what's scripted, but I want you guys to I'm gonna just roll, and I want you guys to just see what happens and say whatever you want. And in that way, every take was different. And I would just keep going and going. And for me, honestly, what I've learned most about directing is like, try not to direct. Like, try to just leave actors alone, because when you give them the space and time, stuff happens. And so for me, there's like, for instance, that scene by the lake, there were so many different things said, and it was just a gift to be able to pick and choose moments, and sometimes even just looks that happened from something that was not in the script that I was able to use to craft that scene.
Throw in one more question about your cast. I'll narrow it down to KJ, but if there's another example, definitely bring it up. I feel like more often than not, people always say, like, what has the director brought out of the actor? But I kind of want to flip it around here, and especially because you and KJ grew so close, what is something he brought out of you as a director that maybe helped you exceed your own expectations for your work?
You know, KJ is one of the most passionate, committed artists I've ever worked with in any medium. And so when you have somebody who is that passionate and committed and obsessive, I thought that I was, but I was like way down here. And so he brought that out of me. You know, I think when you're able to collaborate with people, and I have some collaborators here today, my good friend Augusto, who did all the title and graphic work and was a huge inspiration for this film. I have to give a shout out. I love you. And Lucas Valderrama, who is my assistant and right-hand man on this film. I have to shout out to him. When you collaborate with wonderful people, they bring the best out of you. And with KJ, he brought the best out of me because he made me want to wake up knowing that someone else cared just as much as I did. And when you have that, I think anything is possible. It's hard to work in a vacuum.
I mean, every single movie takes a village. Literally every single person's work is vital to get to the finished product. I cannot emphasize that enough. Broadly, for the whole film, of all the scenes in it, going into filming, which did you think was going to be the toughest to shoot? And ultimately, was it, or did a different one catch you by surprise?
You know, going into the races, right? I haven't shot action before. So this was, my last film was about 3 people, mostly in rooms. And so, and so I was sort of, I brought on an amazing group of people who knew what they were doing and could guide me through it. And so the races were intimidating to me because there's danger involved. You know, there's so many moving pieces. You have these bikes going 150, 160 miles an hour. And so the races were intimidating and they were challenging to shoot, to be honest, because of that. And, you know, weather came in. We had lightning storms almost every day in Georgia. The tracks were wet. You dealt with different personalities. The heat was insane. They're wearing leathers. So I would say that the races were challenging, but ultimately the most rewarding, definitely.
I have so many follow-up questions. So you just mentioned that your first film was very different, basically a whole bunch of people just talking, but still a lot of those lessons can carry over.
Yeah.
So what is something about your feature directorial debut that you found coming in handy on your second movie?
I think, you know, I love movies and stories about people, usually about 3 to 4 people for some reason. And, you know, that is really the nucleus and the North Star for me. And so in that way, this film wasn't different than my first film. It was a few characters who are intersecting in each other's lives and are changed or not by it. And so for me, this film was always, I need to make sure the character storyline is the most important thing that I make work. The racing is secondary. And so for me, the stuff that we did, you know, in Dean's house or at a bar, I approached the same way as I did my first film, and the racing was separate. There was a lot more people involved, but I also wanted to make sure it didn't feel like 2 different films. I wanted to make sure that they were cohesive as well.
The races can only be as thrilling as the character work that kind of backs them up. So they go hand in hand. I'll lean into the races a little harder now. So one thing I was reading is that KJ didn't really know all that much about riding motorcycles before he joined this project. So a couple questions about that. First, for anyone out there who might want to get started learning how to ride, what is like the first tip or trick you would give them?
I will, a quick anecdote. So KJ didn't know how to ride. And this is a year before we started shooting, and he came to my house, and I have a couple bikes, and I showed him kind of how to shift gears and stuff, and I just jumped on my bike, and I said, okay, follow me, and just kind of threw him in trial by fire, and he had to sort of learn and pick it up, and I feel like that was a great way to do it because he had to make the mistakes and figure it out, and also feel like the danger and how to, you know, manage that, and so, yeah, I think that was a great way to do it, but for someone who wants to ride, that's a way to do it. I would say start on a scooter. Scooters are good to start. That's what I did. And take a great course. There's great 2-3 day courses where you can learn the basics and you can get your license the next day. So go for it.
I know you had a bunch of, you know, professional riders, stunt performers on this, but what is something that's actually KJ in the movie that might make people think like, I cannot believe that's the actor doing that?
Ooh, I mean, all that riding at the top in the opening credits was KJ, and he was flying on that bike with no helmet. That was the last day of shooting. They would not allow KJ to essentially ride without a helmet on the bike, but he wanted to, and we wanted him to, and so they said, okay, you can do that, but the very last day of shooting, and we're not going to be involved, which was one of the most fun days of shooting. Was just the cameraman, the sound guy, a few others, and KJ just flying on the back roads on his bike. So.
I love hearing about unexpected magic you could find on set. Can you name a day where you were filming a scene, maybe things weren't going to plan, but you found a creative solution, a way to pivot, and now maybe a scene in the movie is even better off for it?
Yeah, I'll give a good example. So there's the scene outside the diner, which Camilla and Wes, they have a fight outside the diner. And so that night was, Lucas, you remember this night. It was very particular. There was like a 3-hour lightning delay, and we had essentially about 3 hours to shoot this scene outside this diner. And the time continued to dwindle away, and we were like, I don't think we can get this scene at another time. And so the actors said, we're going to be ready. And finally, we had about 20 minutes before wrap, and they jumped out. And the scene, I think, had a certain urgency and intensity because we had 20 minutes. It just stopped raining, so there's a little bit of rain happening, and it really lended itself to the energy of the scene.
It's a great example right there. I want to veer back towards the race scenes. For anyone out there who might want to make a motorcycle racing movie of their own, what is one do and one do not for effectively photographing races?
Ooh. I'd say, for me, a plus was that I didn't really understand how complicated it was going to be. So I think that was a plus because I was sort of like ignorance is bliss sort of thing. But I would say, gosh, dues. I think the way to shoot races is we strap cameras to race bikes. I mean, that's the most practical way. You build tools that will keep up with the bikes. Say we used a helicopter as well because a helicopter was the only way to keep up with race bikes. A drone can't go that fast. As far as the don'ts, I would not shoot in July in Georgia. I would say that for sure.
I think those are two good examples right there. I was also reading a lot about like motorcycle authenticity and all the people you had involved who made sure that everything was accurate. I think you're like a motorcycle journalist on set. Mm-hmm. Your editor has riding experience. Can you give us some examples of things that they flagged, things that maybe would have been a red flag for someone who knows their stuff, but because they spoke up, now it's in the movie and it's authentic?
Absolutely. So I'll just give one major example, which is, I guess, if you talk to motorcyclists and you say, hey, what will make you turn this off immediately? And they say, the sound of the bikes. They say, if you do not have the right sound of the right bike, we will turn it off and immediately we'll be very upset, which happens, I guess, more often than not. So I spent a good amount of time while writing the script choosing the right bikes and making sure that we were going to have the right bikes at the right time with the right sound. So yeah, that was really the most important thing. But also it's just, making sure that the lingo and the language is right. So I worked with a lot of racers in the script writing phase while we were shooting and in post. My editor was an ex-club racer as well to just keep it in check at all levels of the production.
This is a really big question, but you mentioned it earlier that there aren't really any motorcycle racing movies quite like this. Why do you think that's the case?
I've been asking myself that question. I think, when I ask others that question, they say, I think because it's hard to do. And I didn't know that. I didn't know that beforehand. I just said, oh, well, we'll make it work. But I'm not really sure. I think it's not a particularly very popular sport in America, much more overseas and in Europe. I think it is growing. And I think that was part of the reason, too, I wanted to make the film was I wanted to... I love things that are in niche worlds, and I went to club races, and this racing is not MotoGP. People aren't making millions of dollars. These are people who are paying money to race, and I thought the passion and the commitment and the characters that I met while I was going to these races was so interesting. So I really wanted to shine a light on a particular niche community that otherwise wouldn't have, I think.
I'll lean into that a little more. Can you name maybe a particular, quality or thing about those communities that became really important for you to include in your film?
Absolutely. I mean, so we were lucky enough to shoot at a few real races at the track about a month prior before shooting. And you show up in the pits, right? And a MotoGP pit, the highest level, you have like buses and VIP sections and stuff. And you go to these places, there's like a mom who's grilling bacon in the morning and a baby's in a playpen and everyone has their dogs. And it's just a sense of community, almost like camping. And everyone's helping each other out. It's very much like community driven. And for me, that was just so compelling. And honestly, everybody I talked to and I asked, we went around all those races, and that's how we got all the racers. Most of them is we said, hey, we're making this film. We'd love for you to be a part of it, and we'd love for you to just be you. Bring your family, bring your tents, your bikes, your dogs, and we just want to set up this environment to shoot. And they were all there, showed up every single day.
I love that. All right, I'm going to ask 2 more questions before tossing it to the audience. First, can you name a new tool in your directing toolkit, so to speak, that you know you gained from making this movie that you would be excited to utilize on your next one?
Bless you. Wow. Yeah, okay, so I think, is there going to be a sequel, maybe? Maybe we can do the sequel, and we'll just use the same techniques I learned on the first one.
I'll take it.
Maybe that's good. No, I think, with this, it was a much bigger production, and honestly, every production I have, I learn so much because I try to surround myself with people who know much more than I do, and I think I just learned so much in working with a bigger team and a bigger group of people. But I would say always just trying to surround myself with wonderful, empathetic people who are talented and who want to bring their talents, and I want to give them the freedom to do their talents in a film. So I would say that's the thing I continue to learn, is just bring good people into your life.
I feel like everybody in this industry should hold tight to that mentality and apply it to their films. My last question before giving it to the audience is my personal favorite question. I think it's very important to keep asking. So in this industry, people give each other awards, super cool. I find that nobody tells themselves good job nearly enough. So I want to know something you accomplished making this movie that you know you'll be able to look back on and say, I am so proud of what I did there.
Oh, wow. This is hard. I would say, I made so many friends on this film, and who are like family to me now, from actors to crew members, friends and family I brought onto this film. And so I think hopefully we can all look back on this film with a sense of pride in the fact that, completing a film is very difficult. And I think when you bring all these people together, you have this one mission to just complete something, and hopefully it makes sense in the end. And I think just, the friendships that we built on this film and are the most important thing that I will take with me moving forward, for sure.
I love that answer. Filmmaking families make me very, very happy. All right, going to toss it to the audience now. First question right here.
Hi, I'm Allison. Great movie. Wow.
Thank you.
I think I want to ask a question that everybody here is wondering. So the scene where you guys got the shot of AJ's Adonis-like physique, was that like a one-take kind of thing? Because I noticed like some exaggeration on his abdomen area.
Was it a one-take thing?
Probably, right?
Yeah, usually. I mean, that's how committed he was. He was like, mate, because motorcycle racers are very, very ripped. It wasn't just a vain thing. And the first time he took his shirt off, the whole crew was like, what the heck? He has like 12, there's like 2 extra abs going. Like, what is, he's inhuman. So I think I would do a couple extra takes just for the crew members who wanted to see a couple extra takes. Let's just say that. So, yeah. And he was fine with it. Okay, thank you.
All right, who else we got? Who can top that question? Anyone? There we go, right there in the middle.
Oh, great film, by the way.
Thank you.
So during the actual filming process, did you already have in mind what you wanted to kind of in post bring back? Like, did you have a certain amount in production, and then did you take that process with you right away to post, or was it kind of simultaneous? Or
no, thank you. Yeah, so when you're shooting, obviously you're trying to gather as much as you possibly can to be able to use in post, especially with the racing. With the racing, we were like, we have these amount of days, we have these story points we need to hit, but let's just shoot the hell out of it, like as much as we possibly can from every different angle. And so going into post, it was 2 things. One is like the character aspect of it. My editor was already putting together the film in a way while we were shooting, just to make sure we were covering things. And that stuff really was very deliberate, and we kind of knew what those scenes wanted to be. With the racing, it was different. We edited this film, I want to say, for about a year, and we continued to work and to pull different things and try things, because when you have to make a million decisions in a cut of a race, you question all of those decisions, and so you have to let it sit, and then you have to try things. And so it was equally, having what we knew we had while discovering and playing with the material that we had in post-production.
Thank you for your question. All right, we got time for one more, and I think we got it right there.
I'm just curious how many days you had to shoot the movie, because it seems like there was a really exaggerated timetable with losing to like thunderstorms and lightning. So what was the overall shoot like?
I'm gonna minus the thunderstorms, carry the two. It was 25 days of principal photography, and I believe it ended up being 7 days of second unit photography, which some of those days were overlapping. We were doing both at the same time, which, for me is a luxury. It's a luxury to make the film. I'm so grateful to be able to make the film. But for this, people were saying on the crew who are more experienced, saying this is a very tight schedule. But we ended up making it happen. So.
It's quite the ambitious production for someone who's never shot action before. I feel like
I kind of winged it. I'm going to be honest.
That fact would
I highly
shock
recommend
anyone.
just wing it. Yeah.
Really something else. Before this gets drowned out by applause, do spread the word about One Fast Move. It hits Prime Video on the 8th, so if you want to stay up really late tonight, you can watch it again tonight. So tell everybody you know about it. Kelly, huge congratulations on the movie, and thanks for sharing some of your experience with us.
Thank you so much, and thank you all for coming tonight. I really appreciate it. My friends who came, I love you.